Welcome back to Arkwood's podcast series, The Benefits Grove, where we bring in industry experts on various topics. I like to dig deep into a couple things just to bring out education and value. Today we are joined by Anthony Masotto. He is the general manager?
Yes.
General manager of Drexi, right?
Yeah, general manager and executive vice president of AMPS. So don't
really?
Forget, yeah.
Congratulations. High five.
Yeah.
Today we're going to dig into some of the details, just really how the pharmacy industry works and how it impacts our lives.
So they just announced that Optum is they said they're going to pass through all rebates to the group.
All, but how do they define all?
Well, again, that's the big question, right? 100% of what?
Yeah.
And understanding that MSR, right, which is one of the three major GPOs, Optum owns. Right? So MSR collects all the rebates, passes up whatever contractually they have to Optum to give Optum cover. So essentially all they're going to do is just take, 2 pounds of flesh instead of 1 because they're all the same entity.
So what you're saying is that with So what you're saying with vertical integration is that I can make profit on every single level.
Absolutely.
I'm still passing through 100% of the
Absolutely.
rebates.
And that's why they can shift things around. It doesn't matter. They're still going to have, $32 billion a year in profit, and they're still going to grow by X amount. It doesn't really matter. The money's still in the same pool.
So having the distribution system for health insurance, is it helpful having a for-profit system, or should it be more of a non-profit system?
No. So even think about this, right? So non-profit hospitals, right?
Yeah.
340B covered entities, right? They're non-for-profit, so they can go out and get these drugs through the federal program for pennies on the dollar. They turn them around and sell them back into the community, right?
Right.
But they're marking them up. So they're making all this money on all these drugs. Well, what do you think they're doing with all that money? They can't add it in revenue. So guess what they do? They go and buy up more hospital systems and more physician groups and more all of this stuff.
So if I was a 340B eligible, so maybe I should rephrase this for a second. So what a 340B eligible entity is that they're able to buy their drugs because they're a non-for-profit organization. They're able to buy the drugs for basically pennies in the dollar, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Humira, right?
Like $100, right? Call it like, $10.
What's Humira cost on the street?
$7,200.
$7,200 a month for a full prescription fill.
For prescription fill.
And these places are buying it for $10.
Correct.
So my understanding, or I think the concept of the 340B entity is that I have a mission. I'm a non-for-profit, so I have directives that I'm helping my community. I'm in disadvantaged areas of the neighborhood.
Correct.
People that are underserved.
Correct.
So therefore, I'm going to buy that drug for $10, and I'm not going to sell it to you for $7,200, but maybe I'll sell it to you for $3,000.
Exactly.
So now I'm going to pick up the extra
$2,990,
and then I'm going to now use that to fulfill my mission, which is going to be providing services to my members,
your
underserved
poor
population.
And underserved population. But instead, they're taking that money, and again, now they're just becoming bigger and bigger entities.
But then, hopefully, they're serving larger populations of insured people.
Well, and then you look at Walgreens, right? So Walgreens has got 3,700 pharmacies that are all 340B pharmacies.
Right.
So there's all kinds of stuff that's going on in that space. People taking advantage of it and whatnot.
Yeah. So I'm going to retract my first question because that's clearly answering the question there. So let's talk a little bit about how pharmacy works. So I'm a benefits advisor. I've been one for many decades. I started out when I was 12, but I've been many, many decades in this. And I remember when I started out with pharmacy, it was 10% of spend.
Yeah, maybe less.
8% of spend. Yeah. Now we're at 30% of spend. I mean, it seems like we've been the last 5 years. We're at an inflection point where now we're recognizing that pharmacy is really out of control. Mm-hmm. So, from your experience, your perspective, kind of help us understand where the cost of pharmacy comes from. Like, why is pharmacy becoming so expensive, and what drugs is it? Is it our everyday drugs that are, the generics, or is it the drugs that are just on the outlier side that very few of our population are taking, or in between?
Yeah, so it's kind of all over the board, right? So, if you look at it, where pharma is today is that they're really focused in on rare diseases, orphan disease that aren't managed at all, right? So if you kind of look at blood pressure and, diabetics and some of those other things, right? Those are all managed pretty well. Like pharma isn't going saying, hey, how can we make better drugs for, high blood pressure, right?
Because they already have them.
They already have them, right? So it's already managed. There's always all these generics out there, right? So that's, a very inexpensive population to treat. Now, granted, depending on the PBM that you're with, right, they can kind of manipulate that because they make money on those drugs as much as they make money on any other drugs. But with that being said, they're looking at autoimmune diseases and whatever it is, these drugs that are coming to market, multiple sclerosis and
blood diseases,
hemophilia, cancer is a big one, right? So how do they treat cancer better, quicker, with more precision?
Right.
So that technology in itself is allowing pharma to charge exorbitant amounts of money, right? So if you just look from 2008 to 2024, the average drug approved by the FDA in 2008 was around $2,100 a year for treatment.
Okay.
In 2024, the average drug cost is $240,000 a year to treat for 1 year.
Holy smokes.
So again, right, as they focus on, smaller populations, people have, certain disease states, and can we help you? I mean, look, as example, let's see, Trikafta for cystic fibrosis.
Okay.
Right? Again, it's made by one manufacturer. They have literally a market hold on that product. There's no discount on the drug. There's no rebate on the drug. There's no patient assistance on the drug. And that drug costs like $20,000, $30,000 a month for someone that has cystic fibrosis. And there's no other option. But it's also very effective. So again, if you have cystic fibrosis, there's only one drug to dispense, then guess what? Then you have no other choices.
And I guess if I'm looking through the lens of the manufacturer, so that revenue is necessary because there's a lot of drugs that was actually in trial that failed. So I need revenue to help support the system so that I can find the new drugs I'm going to be manufacturing.
And there's a little bit to say to that, but on the other side too, a lot of these manufacturers and a lot of these pharma companies get huge grants from the government, right? The government's funding all this stuff anyways, right? And to your point, it's about $1 billion to take a drug from, brainstorming, whiteboarding, through clinical trials and into the market, right? Once they get
billion. That was a B.
$1 billion, right? So, and then of course, once they get it to market, they have X amount of time before, they lose patents and, other entities can come into the fold.
And the biosimilars and everything else comes out.
It's happening right now with Stelara, right?
Okay.
So
number one drug prescribed?
It's up there, right? It's one of the.
I just see it on TV all the time, so I'm guessing it's the number one prescribed.
It's definitely it's the most expensive rheumatoid arthritis, plaque psoriasis, that for that classification of drug. Okay. It costs $25,000 per fill. But now
there's so many questions I have, but continue.
So end of February,
Yep.
the biosimilars are hitting the market. And what's really interesting about Stelara, unlike Humira, is Humira rollout of biosimilars was a disaster, right? They staggered all this stuff. They allowed AbbVie to kind of still have a market share for a long time. But now, 2 years later, it's starting to whittle away, right? It's not on anybody's preferred formulary anymore. We have lots of options to help treat people with a less costly biosimilar.
Okay.
They're changing the way that they're rolling out Stelara. So within the next 7 months, right, they have multiple biosimilars coming to market, all with anywhere from they have low WAC and high WAC, right? So do you want to play the rebate game, or do you just want the best price you can kind of get out of the gate? But you're talking about WAC minus 85 on a drug that was...
What does WAC mean?
So wholesale acquisition cost.
Thank you, sir.
Right? So wholesale acquisition cost, again, if you want to know what the wholesale acquisition cost, it kind of goes to average wholesale price minus 20%.
Okay.
So anyways, that's just how you kind of calculate the numbers. But you're going from a drug that's going to cost $25,000 to a drug that might only cost $3,000 or $4,000, right?
Okay. And it's a biosimilar.
To biosimilar, right?
Okay.
So they have both a bunch of them, right? And a bunch of them that are going to be interchangeable as well.
Okay.
So essentially, right, they go to the pharmacy, they're having Stelara as the script. We can change it right there and say, all right, you're taking this drug instead of this one.
So let's talk about biosimilars for a second, because they've been a lot of media attention about it. So what is a biosimilar in relationship to a drug? So, and coming from the aspect of a participant. So a participant is going to go get their drug filled.
Correct.
Their doctor is going to write something on the prescription.
Yep.
And it's going to either say dispense is written, or it's going to say substitute, whatever the acronym is.
Correct.
And so if somebody substitutes, the pharmacist might give them a biosimilar.
Correct.
Is it a different drug, the same drug? Is it like...
Think of it as the same as a brand to a generic, right?
Okay.
It's very similar. It's not a bioidentical, right? So if you look at, remember like the insulin, right? Humalog versus Insulin Lispro.
Okay.
They're made by Lilly. They're the exact same drug.
Okay.
Right? But
not even like one
not
mixing
no,
compound?
nothing different. It literally comes off the same production line, right?
Okay.
They just put a different label on it.
Okay.
A biosimilar, right, is molecularly, right, it's the same drug, but it has little variances in it. It's not the exact same thing, right?
Okay.
But now when you talk about, again, these interchangeable drugs, well, they're pretty much the exact match, right? But there's little variances in the drug, but the outcomes are the same.
Okay.
At the end of the day.
So the same efficacy.
And again, and when you have interchangeable drugs, right, they still have to get approval for all the indications as well, right?
Okay.
So again, Stelara has multiple indications, and when a interchangeable biosimilar comes out, it might only be for like one or two indications versus all the indications.
Okay. And the motivation behind a biosimilar is less expensive?
Cost.
Easier to manufacture?
It's not even easier to manufacture. Like the drugs are
Just
not
cost.
expensive to manufacture once they get through trials.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost a lot of money for them to make the drug.
Okay.
They're just charging a lot of money because, one, if it's a very rare disease or an orphan drug, right, we have to make our money on a small population, right? Versus,
and I get some of that just because they had to spend $1 billion so that they could actually get the drug to market.
Correct.
And some of them failed. So I do understand that. I'm not saying folks shouldn't make money. But I think it's a better understanding from a marketplace that if I'm a participant and I'm being presented of doing something different, there's a reasons why we're doing something different.
correct.
Right? Now, is it always driven on cost, or is there always something that's based upon efficacy? Like, are we finding that there's drugs that are coming out that are less expensive that are better at doing a treatment program? Does that even happen?
No, they're more than likely there's a new drug hitting the market that's more expensive that
Okay.
is doing a better job of managing something, right?
Got it.
I was just talking about a drug just not too long ago, Xywav versus Xyram for narcolepsy, right? Xyram has a high sodium.
So when they name stuff, is it just a Latin dictionary that they?
I don't know how.
from there?
I have no idea how they come up with all these names and compounding names and the names that we can't even, pronounce. Is it a name that they can put a jingle against, right? And make it,
Memorable,
memorable.
something that they can sell on TV.
Exactly.
So, okay, there's so much information here. So there's a couple things that I would like to kind of just make sure that we address during our podcast here. The first thing is that just the availability of a PBM like you. Mm-hmm. So you work for an organization that's called Drexi. No one's ever heard of you. You're not advertising on the Super Bowl. Well, maybe you are now. I'm not sure.
Not quite yet.
Yeah, and I hope you never get there because that sends the wrong message. But when we're working with advisors like myself and Arkwood, we're using organizations and analyzing organizations like Drexi because we can interchange out a PBM, and by doing so, number one, it can improve efficiency, but number two, it can save costs. And really, when we're talking about cost, we're talking about members. Because at the end of the day, when the brief conversation we have where the cost of the drug in a program has gone from 8% of total spend to probably 25 to 30% of total spend, that impacts our premium dollar. Because remember, there's only 100 cents in every single dollar. And if I'm running a healthcare plan, I probably need about 80 cents of that dollar to actually pay claims. If my claims become more and more expensive, I need to replenish that 80 cents a lot faster, which means now I got to raise $1.10. Now I got to raise $1.15. I got to keep on adding money to the claims pool so that I have enough money to spend for a 30% increase in pharmacy spend.
Correct.
So, from a plan participant, what do you think their general experience is going to be working with a company that they've never heard of? Because if I go to Blue Cross Blue Shield and I'm insured by Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare or Aetna or Cigna, that's all I know.
Correct.
Because there's a vertical integration behind the scenes and it's all kind of taken care of. If I'm asking someone to layer on a different program with an organization like such as yourself, tell me what the relationship is between you and the member so that they have a better understanding of like what their experience is going to be.
Yep.
And where those experiences come from. And does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay.
So I think you got to take a step back and understand, again, employer groups want to offer the best benefits to their employees, right? Without raising costs, right? Or changing plan design. I mean, we're at a point now where, it's really hard. We can't put any more on the employee, right? The deductibles are high enough.
Well, contractual you can't, because the ACA limits that you can't charge more than 9 point whatever %.
And I think what's really important too is members got to also, and again, right? And sometimes it's difficult because again they have an ailment or they're sick or whatever, and they need something. But also those decisions and the decisions that all the employees make have an effect for the entire population.
Correct.
Right? So understanding like Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna or United Healthcare, right? Their sole purpose in life is to sell you as many drugs as possible at the highest cost, because that's how they make money. Right? They're not there to protect your pocketbook. They're not there to protect the plan's pocketbook. They're there to appease to their shareholders and again maximize that profitability. So, if you just look at a doctor writes you a prescription, he sends it into Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona. 95% of the time, they're going to approve that drug right away. They don't care. They want it out the door. Go pick up your drug. But then again, can you even afford those drugs? Right?
It's a fair statement,
right? So hey, I'm on Humira, for instance, and I'm on a high deductible health plan, and I have to hit my deductible before my plan rules hit.
Yep.
Are you okay with spending $5,000 to go pick up that drug? Right?
And you're going to spend that in January.
Coming
off the holidays.
100%, right?
You already have a lot of credit card because of the holidays.
Absolutely.
Right?
And they're not there to try to help you figure out, is there a better way to do this, right? And again, so they've educated the population to say, it doesn't matter, right? Just fill your script, pay your deductible, the plan will pick up the rest. It doesn't matter where you go and how you acquire the meds, right? But in reality, right, it does, right? So what would you do if I could get your drug for free? Are you willing to do something outside of the norm, right? Understanding that you might have to jump through an extra hoop, right? Or you might...
An extra phone call,
right?
Or an application for something, right?
But then you also have to remember, even like if you go, again, like, so if you look at what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the drug as cheap as possible, right? Same drug, right, by the way, too. We're not trying to get some knockoff drug, but the same thing. Pharma knows this, right? So pharma's playing a game of chicken, right? To see if the member's going to break, we're going to break, the employer's going to break. Because, again, the way that you have to do it in certain scenarios is we have to wait for pharma to make a decision based on your income, based on your household size, to say, hey, you can't afford this drug. We get it. So we're going to give it to you for free. But if in that time period, and sometimes it can be 30 days, sometimes it can be 60 days, if you fill the drug on the plan in that window, you're automatically thrown out and they're going to decline it.
Right. Okay.
And now it's back on plan. And not only is it back on plan for you, I can't send a request for a free drug for anybody else on the plan.
You just qualify
the whole plan from that one medication.
Okay.
So, by doing that, you also have to have some fail safes, right? What other things can we do while we kind of wait, right?
So I have to interrupt you with a question. So you're saying is that there's programs out there that are available to individuals that are income-based where they can get their drug for free.
Correct.
How come nobody experiences that through the big three pharmacies?
Because the only way they make money is to sell you more drugs at a higher cost, right? They want to charge the group $25,000 for a drug.
So let's discuss how a PBM, a pharmacy benefit manager, actually makes money.
Sure.
So let's talk about Optum. They're the number one. They're owned by United Healthcare.
Correct.
Blue Cross uses them. Even ESI, it could be CVS. I don't care which one we talk about. But talk about what their revenue strategies are, how they're established, and where the revenue streams come from.
So when the employer goes into agreement with the PBM, it's a contractual agreement, right? And based on that contractual agreement, there's all kinds of guarantees and, exclusions and rebates and what they're going to give back to the group, right?
Okay.
And understanding, what a PBM does, right? It's an administrator, right? Much like a TPA, right? We pay pharmacies, we do clinical work, we negotiate contract with pharma and retail pharmacy to try to get you the best deal possible, right? And they do all of this, and sometimes they actually pay the employer group, right? They give them credits and said, hey, we're going to give you all this money up front. Just let us have your business. Or they'll just say, we're going to do it for free, right? Well, nothing's free, obviously, right? And within those contractual agreements, they're buying drugs at X and they're selling them at Y. And at the end of the day, they're saying, hey, we're going to meet these guarantees and we're going to do these different things. Well, understanding it's all based on contract. So if I can we'll give you a great example. A lot of specialty drugs that have lost patent, right, have now become generic drugs.
Okay.
Well, the PBMs like to make up terminology, right? So they have these things called specialty generic drugs. Well, to understand, there's only two classifications of drugs: generic drugs and brand drugs. Everything else is just made up.
Yeah, there is no
specialty. There's no specialty generic. There's none of this stuff, right? So when a drug goes generic, right, we've talked about this before, it becomes fairly inexpensive, right? It gets a really big discount. So again, these specialty drugs still have a high WAC or AWP cost, right, out of the gate.
Right.
But then they get these deep discounts, right? So what they'll do is say, if I can reclassify this generic drug and call it a specialty generic drug and put it in this bucket, I only have to give you a 20% discount versus a 95% discount.
Okay.
So for a drug that you could buy for $100 cash, you go buy it cash for like $150, they charge a group $16,000 for it.
Jesus.
That's how they make money.
Okay.
It's all manipulation.
And in the generic sense, you're basically describing spread pricing. I'm
Yeah.
buying the drug for one price. I have a markup. It's just that they're creating this methodology that I can mark it up at 3 or 4 different level of tiers. So that's one way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
So what other sources of revenue are there that PBMs use? I mean, the manufacturers, they pass back rebates. Spend a minute on what a rebate is and how
Yeah,
that
so,
works.
And again, right, the U.S. is the only place in the world that prices and has this black hole of how we, price drugs, right?
Right.
So essentially, way back when, right, PBMs are going, hey, let's charge, double the price, but you're going to give it back into a rebate, and through that rebate, we're going to start kind of scraping off the top a little bit, or you're going to, give us some stuff in rebate, and you're going to give us other dollars that we don't even call a rebate, but. Understanding that there's 3 major GPOs, group purchasing organizations, that have all the direct contracts with pharma, right? Okay. You have MSR, which is Optum. So you have Zinc, which is Caremarks, and you have Ascent, which is ESIs.
Okay. Express Scripts, right?
So all these 3 entities are all owned by the major PBMs, and they're out there contracting and they're collecting because everybody has to go to them. Essentially, they submit everything and they collect all these rebates. All right. Well, they take a piece to manage all that, right? And then they pass it down to what we call aggregators. And one of your aggregators could be one of the big 3. It could be Optum. It could be CVS. It could be Express Scripts. It could be Magellan, Prime, or whoever, right? All right. So, and then, depending on where you are on the totem pole, right, then you have other PBMs contracting with them. So the lower you're on the totem pole, people keeps taking their cut, right?
Okay.
So understanding at the very top, pharma gives 56 cents on the dollar back typically on a rebate in total, like you just kind of put across the board.
Okay.
Pharma does. So pharma gives MSR or Ascent or Zinc 56 cents back, right?
Okay.
So I'll just keep it simple.
That's the gross rebate.
Great, the gross rebate, right?
Okay.
So drug costs $20,000. Let's just make it simple. They're going to give them $10,000 back.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, they're going to take their pound of flesh, and then the next level is going to take their pound of
pound of flesh.
Pound of flesh, right? And so by the time the money comes back, and let's say I'm 100% pass through of rebates, right?
Right.
But it's 100%.
Optum just announced that they have 100% pass through.
100% of what, right? It's 100% of what I get back from my aggregator once it goes through the GPO and then them and then us. So I'm third in line, right? So you just can't go to those top guys, right? It doesn't happen that way, right? You have to. You're at least like 3 steps below.
So what are we at? 20 cents now?
No, so you're at probably like around 30 to 35 cents of the brand spend, typically, right around there. All right, on average.
That's the net rebate.
That's the net rebate, but again, right? There's been 15 to 20% that's been picked off the top by the time it gets to you.
So rebates are effectively. If I'm an employer and I've been promised a rebate on my health plan, I'm getting back money I've already spent.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that's the first takeaway spot of what a rebate is. The second thing I want to ask about rebates is, are there requirements by the manufacturers on quantity sold or the aggregators on the quantity sold to be eligible for rebate? Like, is it every single prescription, or does it be you have to sell $4 million worth of this drug, and now you're eligible for the 56 cents rebate that flows through the different aggregators.
Again, so it's all based on contracting, right? So,
Okay.
and then as you go through aggregators and stuff, and they're saying, hey, based on our contracts with, the step above us, here's kind of what you have to do in order to maximize the rebates, right? So, I'll give you just like some crazy stuff. GLP-1s, right?
Yep.
Costs are through the roof. Certain, some companies don't want to cover them, or they want to put bigger restrictions on them, or whatever, right? So pharma sees that, like, oh, well, why aren't we getting the volume that we're expecting, right? And then they come back and say, hey, look, we see what you're doing, because they audit us, and they say that we have a more restrictive right? They say if you continue to do this, right?
meaning utilization
management, prior authorization, right? Certain parameters that have to be met in order for us to dispense the drug.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, if you have a BMI of 25 based on the FDA and pharma, you can get dispensed a weight loss med, right? If you're covering the weight loss meds. Well, let's say if we raise it to 35, pharma goes, no, you can't do that. If you do that, we're going to pull your rebates for the GLP-1s.
Because you're reducing the population.
Because we're reducing the population that has access to the meds. And they want to have access to the meds. So they have all kinds of protocol and utilization management and things that we can and cannot do when we do prior authorizations, if in fact that we want to make sure that they're eligible for rebates.
Okay. All right. So we've got first way they're making money is spread pricing.
Yep.
What we paid, what we bought it for, what we sold it to the plan for.
Yep.
Second way is they're basically taking haircuts off of rebates. They're rebate harvesting. Starts at 56 cents, comes down to about 35 cents is what the net rebate is to the employer.
Typically.
So it's going to be that haircut. And that's just, but we're still paying 100 cents on the dollar for that drug.
That's right.
We're just getting 35 cents of that dollar back.
That's right.
Okay. So, and I know there's other multiple channels of revenue, but my focus is that we just talked about like what our normal PBM relationships are. So when we have an employer that agrees to bring in an organization such as yourself, which is an independent, transparent pharmacy benefit manager,
Yep.
PBM, how do you operate differently? Like, what are your main tenets that showcase you differently on why we would even do this?
Sure. So I think we need to take a step back too, because the rebate conversation also has ties to other things within the healthcare kind of ecosystem.
Okay.
And it comes with the reinsurance, right?
Okay.
So I have to go and get reinsurance, right? Which is
Stop
loss coverage, right? Because I'm only going to be, at risk for X amount of dollars, in aggregate and per employee, right?
Exactly.
So when a reinsurer looks at your pharmacy spend, they do not care what the rebates are, because they don't get them. They're at risk for the full gross cost of the med.
Okay.
So again, right, drugs $20,000 a month, they're going to underwrite you at a $240,000 a year drug for that individual. They don't care if you get they don't care if you get $200,000 in rebate, because they don't see a dollar of it.
Because it's what they're on the risk for.
It's because what they're on the risk for, right?
So that impacts my stop loss premiums.
It impacts my stop loss premiums, right? It impacts my possibility of a laser, right?
Yeah.
Am I on risk for more money for an individual because of therapy that they're on?
Right.
Right?
And a laser meaning that we're going to exclude this from the stop loss. So
Either exclude it.
If there's a big claim against it, the employer is going to pay whatever that is. There's no protection.
There's no protection, or maybe the protection gets risen, or or whatever that may be, right? So again, that all has an impact on overall premiums of a health plan.
Yeah, we had a stop loss carrier that said that they would never do a laser, and we had a hemophiliac, and our stop loss premium was the same as the hemophiliac's treatment. Well, actually, it was the regular stop loss cost plus whatever his claim was going to be was on top of it. So he was spending $625,000 a year, and they had an additional $625,000 in premium on top of the base premium that they already had. But they're not lasering.
They're not lasering them.
Not lasering.
But we're going to get our money one way or another, or you're going to go somewhere else.
It seems to be a consistency. We're going to get our money one way or the other.
So then, of course, then an entity like us comes into play, right?
Right.
So we have no vertical integration, right? I don't own product, I don't dispense product, and I don't prefer product. I don't make money on drugs.
Okay.
So our sole purpose is to sit on the same side of the table as the consultant in the group and go, this is how we can help you manage this plan. Now, granted, it's up to the employer on what they want to do, what levers they want to pull on.
Right.
But again, if we're not making money on drugs, there's no conflict of interest.
Right.
Right? So understanding if I can get a drug for free and I can do that, or I go international to buy, by the way, the same drug in the same box made by the same manufacturer. And I don't care if it's manufactured here in the U.S. or it's manufactured in...
Well, talk about that. So I know there is an aversion of consuming drugs that are manufactured overseas.
Yeah.
So what percentage of drugs are manufactured that are non-brand? Like non-brand
Are they generics?
Yeah, where are they manufactured right now?
India, China, all throughout Asia.
Okay.
Probably 90% of all the drugs that we take, right?
That we already consuming
that we
right
consume
now.
right now, right?
Yep.
So again, when we talk about risk for the U.S., right? From like a drug perspective, like we get a lot of stuff from China.
Yeah.
They're manufacturing tons of medications, right?
Well, when the supply chains got disrupted, that was a huge conversation. They
That's
actually
right.
went up to the national security level.
That's right, right? So again, they could cut all that stuff off really quickly. So then there's that conversation of, hey, we need to manufacture more of this stuff here, right?
Right.
So again, we take in a lot of that, and of course, right, pharma is less expensive to manufacture, less regulations and things
Right.
like that. From that perspective, now when I say regulation, I mean just from a cost, build, those kinds of things. But a regulation from the FDA, right? It's not like they make different drugs, that are going to come to the U.S. versus where they're going to go from Canada. They still all have regulation and
Right.
imports, and Healthy Canada is the FDA of the U.S. And I would even say that they're more stringent than we are here. They don't allow for certain types of drugs to be imported into Canada, right? Like a lot of the high dose Ozempic for weight loss, they don't allow it, right?
Okay. It just didn't pass. They were more conservative on their.
They're like,
drug
we don't
criteria.
need. Yeah, they're more conservative, right? What's in the, and so there's just different things, right? So they're just like, we're not going to do that. But understanding, like, Johnson & Johnson makes all their biologics, so all their big expensive drugs in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And then they ship them all over the world.
Right.
They ship them to China and Australia and U.S. and Canada.
Canada and us.
So when I say, like I said,
So that's going to be a brand. That's the category of brand.
It's a category of brand.
So let's go back to the percentages. What percentages of the brands are manufactured overseas?
Probably pretty much about this, quite a high amount, right? Probably
70%?
70% of all the drugs are manufactured there.
Yeah, and they're probably more in the EU range versus in Asia.
Yeah. UK, the Netherlands,
Right.
that's really where a lot of the brand stuff is for the most part of the big manufacturers.
All right, so you're talking about J&J, so all their manufacturing for their biosimilars is happening overseas. So what's the difference between buying a drug that was manufactured in the Netherlands in the United States or in Canada?
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same exact drug. Now, from a cost perspective...
Let's talk about that for a second.
So again, understanding, like I said, the way that we are structured around costs is there's rebates and copay cards and assistance and all these other things, right? So the money's got to come from somewhere, right? Pharma's got to pay for access, essentially, is what the system that we've built.
Okay.
So again, if I want to do a deal with Express Scripts goes, hey, you're going to give me X amount of dollars of rebate on this drug. Well, pharma has their margins that they're going to make, right?
Okay.
And if you want all this extra money, well, we're going to raise the price of the met up here.
Okay.
So it's really easy to kind of get a pricing kind of idea of what pharma actually sells the drugs for and where their profitability is. And we just look to somewhere like Canada, right? So, of course, there's little markups there, but that same Stelara drug...
Yeah, it's a different healthcare system.
It's a different healthcare system.
Yeah, the government's buying it versus...
Yeah, I mean, look, they actually, a lot of times, pharma makes more money in other parts of the world than they do selling drugs here in the U.S.
Serious?
Yeah, because PBMs are squeezing them. Everybody's squeezing them for every dollar that they can, right? Because they want to make money, and if you want my 100 million members, you're going to play by my rules. Otherwise, you're not going to be on my formulary, and we're not going to dispense your drug.
Okay.
Right? So that would limit their ability to maximize their profit in a short amount of time, right? So pharma goes, well, we got to do this. And trust me, pharma is sick and tired of it too, but it's just part of the game.
Right.
So that same Stelara drug, you'll walk in, or you really can't walk in on a specialty drug, it'll be sent to you, but let's say you could walk into the CVS and pick it up at the counter, $25,000.
Yep. I
can buy the same drug in the same box with a maple leaf on it instead of a U.S. flag, shipped to your house in 48 hours, cold stored for $8,000.
Okay. That's a sizable difference.
It's a sizable difference. So again, going back to even the reinsurance side, right? So when the reinsurance goes, hey, what are you going to do about these people? And I go, instead of $250,000 a year, this patient's going to cost $96,000.
Right. And that helped my stop loss rate.
And that helped my stop loss rate. And that helped the employer.
So going back to the experience of a participant. So today,
yeah,
80% of our drugs being filled in the United States is through Optum, Express Scripts, right, and ESI. or CVS.
Yes.
So the vast majority of the population has no idea from what's going on. So what we're talking about is creating an opportunity so that a member who is now on a high-cost specialty medication, instead of exhausting their deductible in 1 month or 2 months, depending upon the cost of the drug,
Correct.
because we can acquire the same drug, manufactured in the same manufacturing plant,
Same thing.
but because we can reduce that cost by 65%, we now have the ability of offering that drug for free to that
Correct.
member.
Absolutely.
So it's a member-centric decision. However, they have to do something different. They have to somehow have it intercepted. So there's going to be a phone call that's going to be coming from an advocate, I'm assuming from Drexi.
Absolutely.
That's going to say, hey, you're on this drug. You have the option, right? This is all voluntary, right? This is nothing that's mandatory.
Nope.
You have the option. You can go down to the pharmacy and you can pick up your drug, and it's your deductible. Everything applies as is. Or give us 5 days, and we're going to get it shipped to your house in a temperature-controlled container, and it won't cost you anything.
Exactly. So what happens is, like, again, we're only looking at the high cost meds, right? At the end of the day, the drugs that are, say, $1,000 or more, or depending on what the threshold is that we're setting, right, for that specific group.
Right.
So the drug's more than $1,000. We pen the claim, right? Because what we want to do is give an outreach to the member to let them know what their options are, because they've never had these options before.
Yeah, it's brand new for them.
It's brand new, right? Typically, they got a drug.
You ever read the book Who Moved My Cheese?
No, I have
You
not.
should read the book Who Moved My Cheese. Everybody needs. That's what I do for a living.
Yeah. So again, right? So typically, what would happen is that member goes to the doctor. The doctor says, "Okay, well, I'm going to write you this prescription. I'm going to send it in."
Right.
And all these these really complex drugs need a prior authorization, so they need to send clinical notes, and we got to review them. Sometimes the doctors do, sometimes they don't, right? Just depends, right? So anyways, then there's some time period there of we need to review it, right? Make sure it's the right drug. You're not taking any other medications that could,
compete with it.
Yeah,
or
have
negate it.
a negative interaction, right? And again, just because you're going to see a specialist doesn't mean he's your primary. He doesn't know all the drugs that you're taking, right? So it's kind of a safety measure before we dispense the med.
We were doing a presentation with a physician, and he says more often than not, you'll have the urologist prescribing something. You're going to have the cardiologist prescribing something. You're going to have the guy doing the rheumatoid arthritis prescribing something, and nobody's talking to each other.
That's right.
And that's where that presentation specifically was having a primary care physician to kind of help quarterback that stuff, make sure that there was communication. But he said, yeah, there's drugs out there that will absolutely reverse or complicate.
So again, right, so that's part of the job as the PBM from a clinical perspective.
Right.
Because if you're using your card at all these different entities, right, we still see all the drugs.
Right.
So then we can notify the prescribing physician to say, hey, just as a heads up, this could be a problem, right? Are you okay with it? And then that doctor can sign off on it, right? But in order to do that, like, we need medical records, and they got to communicate with each other.
You need to have a clinical review.
A clinical review, right? So people think the doctor writes a script, he sends it in, I can't get it. Like, what's going on, right? And sometimes docs aren't the quickest.
It's not just to freak people out and have them wait.
No, that's not what it's about. It's about safety and protocol and making sure that we check all the boxes, right?
And honestly, this is going to happen at Optum or Express Scripts too. I mean, they're doing the same type of stuff.
They're doing the same type of thing.
The triggers are probably similar, where it's 3+ drugs, 4+ drugs. They're automatically getting clinical reviewed for that purpose, because we have multiple physicians prescribing this stuff.
That's right.
So I get that. So that experience is probably the same.
Yeah, and again, so that can, again, I know that can cause some frustration. People are like, where's my prior authorization?
But they know those names. They don't know your name.
They don't know my name.
So it's your fault.
That's right, it's my fault. They're holding up my drug, right? Yep. They're doing all these different things. Well, that's not the intention.
I mean that in the best way you can interpret that, by the way.
So, again, we're pending the claim, right? So when that happens, right, so we have a complete care navigation team within Drexi.
Right.
That all they're doing is either taking incoming calls from people, asking for help, or they know that they're on a medication that we can help with.
Right.
Or we're proactively reaching out. Because we know if one of those drugs try to go through, we penned it, it's like, oh, Peter tried to fill this med, I'm going to reach out, right? And say, hey, Peter, saw that you tried to fill this medication. Just wanted to let you know that there's some programs in play here that can help mitigate your costs, right?
Yep.
And here are your options, right? So if you want to try to go through a manufacturer to get drugs, a free medication, and since free for all, meaning
because that was in the Medicare Reconciliation Act of whatever 1980 something, right? Where that if you're going to have these like advertise on TV and have the high cost medications, you have to have some type of an access to for low income or some income test so that they can get a drug for no cost.
Yeah, well, no cost, or the 340B programs came out, right?
Right.
There's all these things that kind of came to be,
Right.
out of them being able to advertise. Which, by the way, again, the only country that allows for people to pharma to advertise on TV. So, anyways, when we go through that, right, understanding that, we have what we call like knockout questions, because if a drug is available for manufacturer's assistance, we'll ask you certain things like, what is your household income, right?
Okay.
How many dependents do you have, right? Those are important because pharma looks at that in order to determine whether or not you meet the qualifications to get the drug for free.
Right.
Now, the qualifications are not as stringent as people think, for the most part.
Okay.
If you're on a drug that's like $40,000, $50,000, you could be literally a doctor making a ton of money and still get approved for that drug, because who has $480,000 a year to pay for a drug?
Okay.
Right?
All right.
But now, granted, even a drug like Humira, when Humira had patient assistance,
Right.
it was 500% of the federal poverty level. So if you were a family of four and you made under $175,000, $180,000 a year, they would give you the drug for free.
Okay.
So again, right now, with all this stuff happening, pharma's gotten more tight, and a lot of those programs have gone away. But there's still lots of programs out there for people to take advantage of. So if there isn't a program, right, and we can do the international, well, the member can still get the drug for free. The company gets the drug for a reduced cost, which helps everybody.
Right.
Not only you, but the renewal, everything. And it helps with the company as well, thinking about, we've saved companies millions of dollars within a given year.
Yep.
And you think about that goes to the bottom line, right? How many more widgets would you have to sell to make up $1 million or $2 million, right?
What's your sales margin?
What is your sales margin, right? And typically most companies are at like around a 15 to 20% sales margin if they're lucky.
Yeah.
You got to sell a lot more widgets in order to meet that demand.
So I'm going to try to equate this to an experience that I just went through. So I had to go buy a new laptop. I found the laptop I wanted. I did it at Best Buy. And at Best Buy, they have a little QR code. I scanned that QR code, and I shopped for the computer I wanted to, and I went to like Amazon and then like 3 other, CNET or something like that. There was like 3 other vendors that came up, and they were all different prices, and I took the lowest price, and I went to Best Buy, and I said, I wanted to pay for this.
Price match.
And they said, yeah, we'll price match. Absolutely no problem. Effectively, that's what you're doing for me in drugs. Right?
Yeah, essentially.
You're the guy behind the scenes saying, you know what, we can acquire this drug for less than what we're currently acquiring it for. These are our 3 different options for it.
Yep.
Which one would you like to pay? Right?
Yeah.
And it's either, for the member perspective, it's always going to be 0 because we're asking them to do something different. So 100% they should benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, again, giving that proposal to a member,
Right?
90+% of the time, they're going to go,
Sure.
I'll take that.
I'll take it for free.
I'll take it for free.
But it's disruptive. And that's the point, is that we're asking them to do something different.
Now I will say, right? Again, there's a learning curve, right? So anytime we even bring a new group on, let's say the first 90 days, right? Yeah. It's just different, right? But once they understand what's going on, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, I didn't spend $10,000 a month. I didn't spend $10,000 this year on my med.
Right.
Like I didn't pay anything. It was 0.
Or my son's insulin.
And think about you're a blue collar worker, making $30, $20 an hour.
Was that WERKER or is that WORKE? Like worker. Sorry.
But I mean, think about someone that makes $60,000, $70,000 a year, and I can save 10% of their. This is gross. This is not even after taxes and everything else.
This is gross wages.
This is gross wages.
Yep.
What's the that's $1,000 extra a month for them to do.
It's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference.
Right.
Because again, you are on one of these drugs, you are hitting your max out of pocket no matter what.
Yes. Anthony, tell us a little bit about where you think the industry is headed. So I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of conversation. Clearly, the government came out, maybe not clearly, but the government came out and they're now negotiating drugs. The first 10 drugs were negotiated. Now I think there's around 2 that they're now pushing it to 50, I think, that Medicare is negotiating for.
Yep.
So there's a lot of movement around this. Florida, I think, just passed something that their state employees can now acquire drugs internationally.
They can.
I know here in Arizona that there was a bill. It didn't pass last session. I don't know if it's on the docket for the session that just opened up this week. But I know pharmacy, there's actually a pharmacy page that our legislative team goes to, and we can see all the different states are talking about pharmacy.
That's right.
So where's our industry headed?
So unfortunately, it's not heading to cheaper drugs. I can tell you that right now, right? So,
Swing and a miss.
Swing and a miss. Again, anytime the government gets involved, it seems to always have an adverse effect on the commercial side, right? So government and commercial, right? I squeeze the balloon, right? And the balloon gets bigger on the other side, right? So it's not like hospitals are getting any bigger, right? So as you negotiate more Medicare and all this other stuff, my price per bed is going down, so I got to charge more on the ones that I can make money on.
Right.
No different on drugs, right? If I'm farming, you're squeezing me over here. Guess what's going to happen? I got to make
it up somewhere.
I got to make it up somewhere.
Right.
But with where we're going with gene and cell therapy and precision medicine in the next 10 years is going to probably be very shocking to people, right? The explosion of AI, quantum computing, pharma all together, they are accelerating some of these drugs like you wouldn't believe, right? They're in stage 4 trials right now to have a cure for type 1 diabetes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine that, right? Yeah. And imagine, right? The only way pharma makes money is that you have a bunch of...
Hold, time out. So I think having a cure is fantastic, and I completely advocate that. But now we just took off a revenue stream for...
all the people how I manage all my diabetics, right?
Yeah.
So what is that drug...
So how does that work?
What is that drug going to cost? No different. I'll give you a perfect example, right? So, of course, there's a cell and gene...
This is not a very altruic conversation, is it? This is going to be...
It's, again, right? So you got to remember now, right? So, like, you have science, and we're going to, colliding, right? Because where they're going is to say, essentially, I can precision make a drug based on your genome to cure all your possible ailments, right? I can map your genome. I know what you're predisposed to. I give you a gene therapy drug, and it will fill in all the gaps. Is essentially where they want to go.
Okay.
Think about, remember Jurassic Park?
Yes.
Remember how they had all the missing DNA and they put all this stuff together? Well, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to recreate that.
Can they do that now? Is there a way that folks can have their genomes, what do you call it, tested so that when they're being prescribed all these drugs, they know what's variant to the drug or what drug's going to work best for that particular
There's pharmacogenomics, but that's also for only a certain...
Pharmacogenomics? Cogenomics.
Pharmacogenomics, right, is what it's called.
Okay.
And what that is certain, for cardiovascular and certain drug, certain kind of ailments,
okay,
they can test you to see, what is effective for you and what is not. Because, again, when you get into polypharma, which is multiple drugs taken by an individual,
okay,
doctor said, I come in and I have an ailment, he gives me a med, right?
Yeah.
And I come back in, I'm like, I'm having these side effects, and he gives you another med for those side effects,
right?
And then that thing creates another side effect. So all of a sudden, now you're on 5 or 6 medications,
right? When
actually the first drug was the wrong drug for you in the first place. So it created all these downward negative effects.
Okay.
But unfortunately, right, there's only, again, it's only from certain drug classifications, and, it's just, and the issue with it, you can get it done. The problem is who's going to kind of go by the report, right?
Right.
So now you have to carry that report with you from doctor to doctor, and, now he's not really looking at it.
It really improves your efficacy of the treatment program.
It absolutely can.
And I guess, and there's money, and I know it's new, so this is not mainstream yet.
Well, it's been around for a while. The problem is that the adoption has been very low, because also most people do not want to have their DNA tested either. They find that to be very invasive. But essentially...
Shocking.
Yeah, I know, right? So, but no, I mean...
we are fiercely independent. I mean, if I've not learned anything in the last decade, is that we are fiercely independent. We like to present new ideas, and a lot of it involves an advocate of asking them to do something different.
Yep.
And it's usually, don't tell me what to do.
That's right.
You know,
I'm fine. Don't worry about it.
Don't-
Just give it to
I
me
know
this
how
way.
to
I
do
want
it.
to continue to do what I do.
even though we're the guys that are scanning the QR codes to see where I can get that laptop for less expensive,
Right.
behind the
Right.
scenes.
So, so again, right, we have about 50 cell and gene therapy drugs on the market right now.
Okay.
Okay. Now, there's very tight protocol of who gets them, and they have to do blood. They have to map things out to see if you're even a good candidate for it.
Okay.
Right. So, to give you an example, Hemgenix is this gene therapy drug for hemophilia B. Right. So, if
Okay.
I have hemophilia B, I can go in and get the gene therapy injection, and it's supposed to cure my hemophilia. Right.
All right. So it's $1 million.
3.5 million.
God.
So now there's not that many people in the world with or in the U.S. with hemophilia B, so the studies are very small.
Okay.
Right? So the way that through the study, their points was there wasn't a major bleed within 18 months, right? And the drug didn't kill you, right? So the FDA approved it on that study, right? So no major bleed after 18 months, and it was safe for the individual to take. Guess what do you think happened after 18 months for patients? Some patients. They started to have bleeds again.
Okay.
So the gene therapy drug is not a.
I was thinking that they were going to die, but okay.
It's not
that bad.
It's not a one and done. It's not a one and done drug yet, right?
Oh, so I'm at $7.5 million.
So
I'm at $10 million.
so technically, right? It was supposed to have a life expectancy of somewhere between 5 to 8 years, and then you would have to take it again, right? It's a continual.
So then you're that cost versus the cost of my existing treatment plan.
That's right. It's $1 million a year for my drug treatment versus $3.5 million. If I can get to 5 years, my ROI is of $1.5 million, right?
Okay.
So the problem is that we're like in the new frontier of these medications, right? So as we get smarter and again AI and all these things can help us get better and better, 100% some of this stuff is where it's going, right? Again, can I map your genome and I can make a drug just for you? But the question is what does that mean? What is that value to you?
Yeah.
What is that value to pharma?
Yeah.
The more people I treat,
If you can cure type 1,
that's right.
I know I would. If I was a type 1, I'm not, but if I was, I'm sure I would jump on it if I had the opportunity to.
And think about this too. Now you have a moral conversation.
But that's a misaligned interest between the industry versus the patient, right? Because the industry's got revenue. I know it's my decision, but still.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, right? People are being born every single day, right? It's going to continue to happen over and over and over and over again. And if I can charge $5 million for a drug and over the life expectancy, I know that's what you're going to spend in insulin. Does it matter?
Okay.
Right? So, the other thing too is if you think about this is like, well, shit, I don't want to get sick. I want to live for, to be 80, 90. I don't want cancer. I don't want all these things. Well, the drug will be $10 million. Well, I don't have $10 million. So now you think about, now you take out some kind of reverse mortgage on your life and you pay a monthly thing. And
This sounds like a movie.
But again, right? I mean, think about it. It is like a movie, but this is weird.
What was that one movie where they were like sharing time?
Yeah. So
you had like a watch or something or a phone, and you could
you would push each other's hand, and then you would get more time, right? Yeah. And all the rich people had like millions and millions of hours, and the poor people had like 500, right?
Yeah,
so they're trying to
they're selling their
I think out of time or something like that, or something like that. But
funny.
Look, I'm not talking about in the next 3, 4. But again, I mean, they're coming. The amount of these drugs that are in the pipeline in late stages are in the hundreds and thousands.
Wow. Well, I mean, that is cool, and I embrace technology.
100, yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And it'll definitely change society, and not a bad thing either. But I think what the whole point of our conversation is that there's a better way to source the drugs. So regardless of whatever drug that's coming out, at some point it's going to be really expensive when it hits the market. That's just normal. And then there's going to be a reduction in costs, and then there's going to be opportunities in that time frame is that you can buy it internationally, which is going to be probably manufactured in the exact same line in the Netherlands in your example
that's
for
right.
Johnson & Johnson. Or I can get it from the manufacturer's assistance where under an income test I can get it for free. So we're really, from a participant's perspective, we're really just giving them the opportunity to reduce their expenses. And we're doing that by reducing the entire plan's expenses, which then helps our premiums in the future for 30% of our claim spend.
That's right.
25%.
And again, we're asking them just to entertain to do something different.
Right.
But again, right, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and explain a different result.
Right.
Well, if you want to continue to pay your max out of pocket and all this money year over year over year, by all means, go for it.
Go for
right?
it. Yeah.
But employers are getting to a point now too where they're like, we can't continue to afford for this stuff, right?
Well, yeah, I can't tell you how many employers I talk to with the increases that they have in premium, and that's the challenge of this industry is that we have an increase in premium that's being billed through the renewal, right? The employer is pegged at 9.5% of what the employee is going to be paying, which is, I mean, probably even high just from standards when you're talking about somebody that's making $70,000 a year,
Yeah.
Our mean income here in Arizona. So what do? They can't afford the delta. It's a disproportionate renewal, so they reduce benefits.
That's right.
Now I got a $5,000 deductible. Now I got a $6,000.
Now I'm not covering any more specialty drugs, and now I'm not. Now I'm starting excluding stuff. Like I can't.
Right.
I can't do
There's
it.
got to be an end, and so that's where all these different type of strategies are coming up. Is that they're very, very purposeful
That's
to
right.
make sure that we can actually have a sustainable system versus something that's just. I mean, we're really trying to bring control back into a completely out of control system, from my perspective.
And the one thing I will say that's much different than, again, all these big guys and all the big PBMs and stuff like that is, like, when members talk, we're on your team. Like, we're trying to
Right.
get you this.
You're on the side of the table.
I'm with them. I'm like, hey, look, all right, here are your options. Like, let me go down this path with you and let me help you.
That's a good thing you brought up, which you didn't address before. So how do you get paid? As an independent, transparent PBM, how do you get paid?
So we have an administration fee, right? We charge the group per employee per month,
Okay.
and that's our revenue source.
Okay, so you're not paid on a drug.
Nope.
You're not paid on a rebate.
Nope.
If a rebate happens, 100% of whatever the rebate that was received,
But I get
goes right back to the
goes
employee.
back to
You're
the
just
employer.
facilitating.
That's right.
So you have no skin in the game
None at all.
at all.
None at all.
You're on the consumer side of the table.
Yeah. So again, right. So what we're also trying to do as well, and this is going back even to the prescribers, right? Doctors don't know every drug that's available. They don't know every drug that's on your formulary. They don't know. Most of them don't even know how expensive some of these drugs
Correct.
are. Right. So we're also trying to help educate them and the member to say, hey, you're trying to dispense this drug, right? Did you know that there was this one, right?
Right.
Did you the brand? And most doctors will write, hey, they'll write the brand drug, but they'll say generic is okay.
Right.
But they don't know what the legal, the whole name of the generic name is, right? So, again, they're trying to help you as well, but even understanding at the end of the day, they see you, they just had a pharma rep in their office, he told them about something, you have this ailment, he's writing you the prescription going, this is the drug for you.
I mean, I got to imagine there's some more clinical.
There
from a
but again, right?
perspective.
Even when you think about it, right? Think about if you went in with rheumatoid arthritis. He has like 12 drugs to choose from.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So the one that he writes is typically the one by they probably all right. I got Humira, I got Stelara, I got Skyrizi, I got Bimalex, I got all these options. Which one do I pick?
Right.
So
whoever's in their last is what you're saying?
or whoever, again, whichever one he's had probably the most success with or whatever it is. But these other variations of the drug are made because someone grows an immune to one and then they have something else and they do something else. So it's not an easy system, right? It's not an easy process for anybody.
So having your clinicians and stuff on staff. So you know what? Let's talk about just your organization as a whole. So
Yeah.
how many belly buttons do you serve from a patient member perspective?
So we have around 400,000 members that we serve.
Okay.
Right?
And that's every state in the union?
Every state, all 50 states we have members in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how many clinicians do you have on your staff that are actually the pharmacists that are reviewing and looking at?
So I
Interactions.
have around 10 PharmDs on staff.
Okay.
I have probably 5 or 6. Most of my advocates are also farm techs.
Okay.
So again, they know the drugs. They've come from specialty pharmacies, right? So I have a pretty good team there.
Okay. What's your call volume that comes in for the folks that are answering the phone? Like, what's the average wait time? What's the average response time?
So there's two things, right? There's the call center and then there's the advocacy, right? Those are two separate things. But the call center average wait time is under 30 seconds to actually talk to a human being in the U.S., by the way. Now, granted, right, we're not open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. But they're
Although if I'm me and I'm filling out drugs and prescriptions, I'm probably getting it on the weekends.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No.
My schedule is.
Now, again, right, for the most part, right, most drugs are going to be able to self-adjudicate, again, unless it's something very special or something that, needs, clinical attention or things like that.
Okay.
But we're also owned by a much bigger organization.
Okay.
Which is by it's called Advanced Medical Pricing Solutions.
Okay.
It's a cost containment company, and we do everything from medical bill. So we're in the hospital systems, medical bill review, payment integrity. So our employer groups paying accurate bills, the right bills? Are they?
So you understand the entire ecosystem?
Yeah, the entire
of
ecosystem.
Pricing inside of that.
100%.
Okay, so now if I'm a participant, what's the best way for me to interact? Should I just call? Do you have an app that I should be looking at?
Yeah.
Like how do I?
So
you have an app. We'll talk about that.
So we do have an app. So typically we follow the members' way of communication.
Okay.
So we can text message with the employees. They can go and chat with, go through our website and chat. If they want to do email communication. So whatever the best way for them to communicate with us is how we want to communicate with them, right?
Okay.
Some people just like to have a phone call, right? It's just
Right.
easier.
Okay.
So there's many different ways. And then, of course, you talked about the app. The app is how we've kind of pulled all this together to kind of empower the members themselves, right?
Okay.
So if you're sitting in the doctor's office and he's writing you a prescription, you can pull up your app, type in
They always ask, who's your pharmacy?
who's your pharmacy, right?
Yeah.
Type in your drug, and based on your, once you're registered in the app, it will show you the best place to buy that drug,
Okay.
right? If you make a bad decision and say, hey, just out of status quo, you say CVS, well, expect a notification from us. We're going to push you information to say, hey, did you know you could save $20 and go from pharmacy A to pharmacy B?
Which might be a mile away.
Could be in the same parking lot.
Could be in the same parking lot.
And you can just click a button and we'll move the prescription for you. If you're on an expensive brand drug and there's a generic available, or maybe there's one that just became available, we'll push you that information. You can change your drug. We'll send the notice to the doctor. The doctor will rewrite the script, and we'll let you know that now instead of $1,000 a month, your drug now costs $200.
So a successful program is that, number one, they're engaging with the app because that's giving them more information that they've ever been used to as
Correct.
far as managing their prescriptions.
Yes.
And then number two is that however they want to interact with you is they can.
Yep.
However, there is proactive outreach.
Yes.
Your folks will call them.
Yes.
So it's important for them to receive a phone call, get a message, return those phone calls because there's something that needs clarity.
Yes.
And that's something else I found, and I don't know if it's strictly just a Drexi or if it's anybody else, but it seems like the word deny comes out a lot. Like my prescription's been denied. When a denial doesn't really mean denied. It just means is that we got to put a hold on it for a second because we need more information.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
So I think that it's either denied or rejected.
Or rejected.
Rejected
Yeah,
is a big one,
but
right?
I still, I'll get my prescription was denied because
So
they said it was rejected.
again, right? So let's say again, the doctor's writing a prescription. He goes, "Okay, I submitted it to CVS." You go to CVS and they try to run it. The CVS goes, "I'm sorry, this is rejected." And all of a sudden the member goes, "I can't get my drug."
Right.
That's not the drug might need a prior authorization, right? Or if it's a high cost drug, you either one. And again, within the pharmacy, in the pharmacy, there's a reject code. There's a message that's on the screen that gets sent back to the pharmacist.
Okay.
Most of the time, he doesn't even read the message.
Okay.
And that message typically says, "This drug is available for patient assistance or whatever. Please call Drexi." Or there's usually some kind of notification back to the pharmacist to relay some type of information, right?
Okay.
That doesn't normally happen. They're busy. I get it. They're doing a million other things.
Heck yeah.
So again, the next thing is yes, either they can reach to us, and that's usually all in the open enrollment material, or we're reaching out to them, and that's why we're calling them.
Will you ping that same message that's on the screen at the pharmacy to the app?
No, so nothing goes to the app when it comes from a reject, right?
Okay.
It doesn't have that.
Can you build that?
It's
So they can get a ping that comes up and says, this are the reasons why?
Again, that's something that we could probably consider on doing, and notifying somebody that, hey, you try to see you fill this drug.
Yeah.
The big thing is one.
We like immediate gratification.
I mean, one is, are the members engaged, or everybody has the app, and do they have the notification turned on? And there's all kinds of
make
stuff.
default settings.
A lot of
when we're doing
default
that.
settings
So
and stuff
We'll
going
definitely
on,
do a
but-
campaign around getting the app installed.
And again, right, if there's ever an issue, right, if they ever have a question, right, again, we had a patient not too long ago that said that they didn't even realize that it was pharma that was calling them about, that said that drugs weren't covered on the formulary versus us, right, because we were going through patient assistance.
Okay.
So the manufacturer called the patient and said, hey, just so you know, this drug is excluded from your plan. Well, again, this patient was like, just up in arms, like, oh, this drug isn't covered, yada, yada, yada. And that wasn't even the case, right?
Right.
So manufacturer, again...
A little bit of a game of telephone.
It's a game of telephone, and there's different things that happen.
But it does go back to we're asking them to do something different.
We are.
And there's a reason we covered why. The reasons are that we're doing something different. So if I'm a member and I'm picking up a prescription and this is happening to me, and now all of a sudden I've got an opportunity for manufacturer's assistance, is that a 5-day thing? Is it a hour thing? Is it a 3-month process? Like,
in order to go through the process and get approved?
yes.
It depends on the manufacturer, and again, is it a drug that manufacturer doesn't care about giving $1,000 drug away, or is it a $50,000 drug where they're like they want to make sure they check all the boxes? Now, granted, in certain scenarios, especially around like life-saving drugs, pharma typically will do what they call a bridge fill.
Okay.
So understanding that if it's something that you need and you cannot go without, right? Pharma typically will give you the drug at no cost.
Isn't every drug I'm filling at the time I'm at the pharmacy the drug I can't live without?
Well, there's a difference between life-saving drugs
That's fair.
and life-changing drugs,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
The life-changing drugs are the drugs that are going to make my life a lot easier and better versus I need this drug or I'm going to keel over.
Got it. Okay.
Right? So
That's
there's,
fair.
and again, depending on the manufacturer and their kind of what their programs are, again, right? The typical time is somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks to get approval.
Okay.
Right?
So that's from an assistance program.
Yes.
What about if you're sourcing international because you found that as an option?
Let's say we talk to you on Monday. You say, I want to do the drug international.
Yep.
We have all the information. We have the prescription. It's already approved, right?
Right.
We submit it. It takes about 48 hours for the pharmacy to process it. So if it'll go out, say, on a Wednesday,
Yep.
you'll have the drug by Friday. So it's usually a timing thing.
Okay.
So if it comes later in the week, like a Wednesday or a Thursday, it won't go out till Monday, and you'll probably get it Wednesday or Thursday the following week.
Okay.
Now, typically the biggest delay in getting a drug ordered is getting the prescriber to send the prescription.
Okay.
So understanding that, like, we're not trying to put anything on because we don't need the patient to do anything because we reach out to the provider. We're in the EHR system, or at least the pharmacy, our international pharmacy vendor is.
Okay.
They e-script it.
Yeah.
So
nothing's paper anymore.
Nothing's paper anymore. Now, if you can get a prescription, right, or you can poke the doctor to send it quicker or have access to it right away, then we don't have it typically helps us out. But that's usually the biggest holdup.
Okay.
Is the prescriber and sending the prescription.
And anytime we're asking a member to do something different, we're benefiting them by waiving their out-of-pocket expense.
$0.
Okay.
So no matter what, if I'm getting it for free or I'm going international, they're getting the drug for nothing.
And so when they're putting the prescription, they're at the doctor's office, the doctor's saying, what pharmacy should I send this to? They're putting it in the app. Will anything happen in the app right then and there that says, hey, this might be eligible for international, or you can
Yeah,
go?
100%. Okay. So if they type the drug that's being prescribed in the app, it will tell if that drug is available international.
Okay.
It will tell you if there's a discount card that you can use at the pharmacy.
Okay.
It will tell you the best place to buy that drug because guess what? Where you go can have huge variation in cost.
Right.
So
yeah,
it will tell you all of those things.
But you're giving them proactive information so that we can help with education that they're not going to show up at the pharmacy and then this is the first time they're hearing it. Because now they just killed 4 hours because they left work early, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, maybe not 4 hours, but maybe they killed 2 hours of something that they wanted to spend doing something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Fair. So, Anthony, we spend a lot of time on kind of the consumer interaction with getting their drugs that have already been prescribed. However, if I'm going to an outpatient facility for different treatment programs, that's an entirely different process, right? That's like a whole nother chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the medical side of the prescription drug stuff,
okay.
Right? So
J codes?
They're called J codes.
Okay.
There's J codes, A codes. There's all kinds of different coding systems that they have, but predominantly they're J codes.
Okay.
And there's people that go to the outpatient facility for maintenance treatment, right? So let's think about like multiple sclerosis, for example. Multiple sclerosis, most people are on a drug called Ocrevus. Ocrevus is infused twice a year, right? Going to just, maybe like a community or a for-profit hospital, right? You go in there, they're going to charge around $100,000 per infusion.
Okay. In the outpatient setting?
In the outpatient setting.
Okay.
But again, they're making all the money on the drugs. They're charging 400%, 500%, 600% of the actual drug cost, right? Because you're coming in the hospital. That's how they're going to make their money, right? Okay. So we help a lot of plans and individuals manage that as well, right? So not only can we buy the drug at a huge discount.
You're getting tongue-tied.
A huge discount. But most of the time, we can get it done in the member's home.
Okay.
right? So who wants to get in their car and drive to a hospital and sit in an infusion center, right, with a bunch of other people getting drugs infused, when I can sit on my
And
couch?
there's probably a higher germ count. I'm not a germaphobe, but I got to imagine.
I mean, just
I'm
ease
safer at
and
home.
safe and comfortable. So again, $100,000 per infusion, $200,000 a year is on average, 80 to 100,000 per infusion. We can get it done in the member's home for 34 grand per infusion.
Wow.
That's just one example, right?
Yep.
Cancer is the
And
big.
now their deductibles waived, their out of pocket is waived. Well, they probably already had that waived by now anyway, but still, it's more convenient for them. They're in a setting that they like better. They're more comfortable, right?
Yeah, and
Less
the
expensive.
and the employer is again saving $100,000 a year on that one patient.
Right. Which is important because there's only 100 cents in the dollar, and that's 80 cents of that's reserved for claims.
That's right.
And if we're spending $200,000 a year versus $36,000 a year, that's going to put strain on the premium increases for next year.
Yeah, I mean there's all kinds of stuff. I mean there's a new drug out for what they call bulging eye diseases, right? So that's an injection into the eye. It's infused over 6 times, but it's also done in consecutive years, right? So it gets done over 2 years.
Okay.
There was a hospital system, or again, it's not out of the norm, was charging $250,000 in infusion for that drug.
Wow.
Now, granted, it's still an expensive treatment, but we can get it done for like 80 per infusion. So instead of $1.3 million for that treatment.
But you're just talking about being a consumer. So if I'm buying a car, I'm going to pick out the car I want, and I'm going to fax it to the dealers, and whoever gives me the best price, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, so
if I'm buying a TV, if I'm buying anything else in my world, I'm price shopping.
And we're not, so we're always,
Right.
you're price shopping, right? And so
Everything I do.
So if you look at it in this way, as long as the diagnosis is correct,
Right.
where you get your drugs, where you get your treatment should have no differential in the outcome, right? Especially around
Right.
drugs.
Yeah.
It's the same drug.
Yeah.
I'm getting the same drug at CVS as I am at the grocery store, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting the same drug infused in the hospital as I can in an outpatient or in an ambulatory infusion center or in my home, right? Everything is the same. There is no difference. It's not like it's a knockoff or it's expired product
Not
or
a discount.
It's not It's discounted. It's
But,
just
yes.
it's just we're not doing the markup, right? We're not taking advantage of an individual sick person or again a plan that is extremely giving to their employees.
Right.
So there's options. And
and I think it's important because, there's two people that are involved. There are two entities involved in this. You have the individual, the individual's experience and whether or not it's an infusion or what they're spending at the pharmacy or how they're sourcing the drug. But then you have the employer. The employer is also funding the lion's share of that claim.
absolutely.
And healthcare plans right now are, I would wager, in the top 3 of anyone's P&L. So if I'm looking at the money I spend, so I'm a CFO, I know that from a CFO's perspective, there's only 100 cents in every single dollar, right? And if I have the opportunity that I can reduce the expense that I'm spending on my healthcare plan and improve the benefits that I'm actually giving to my members, now I've got money I can use on research and development. I've got money I can use on mergers and acquisitions. I've got talent acquisition, talent compensation
Salary
packages,
increases,
salary
compensation increases. A million
recruiting. There's so many different opportunities to redirect the money that we're giving to the insurance company to have a better purpose inside the organization that's actually earning these dollars.
Yeah, and you think about this too. Most employers have gone into a self-funded arrangement, right? So they could control their costs, control their options, control their spend, and it's become something that they're now not controlling, right? Now you're getting these big health plans dictating what you can and cannot do by utilizing their network.
So that's a good thing we didn't touch on that. Let's talk about formulary design.
Yeah.
Because when I first started working with folks like you, is that what I first recognized is that the formularies were different. Because I remember 5 years ago, maybe, I used to have generic brand specialty copays. Might have been 6 years ago. Now I've got level 1, level 2, level 3, sometimes now level 4. And I recognize that any health insurance plan where they got rid of the word generic brand and specialty and they interchanged it with a number, it's because they scrambled the formulary. And I was finding that my level 1 generic drugs were on level 3.
That's right.
And my expensive drugs that used to be on my specialty copay are now on my level 1 cheap copay.
That's right.
So talk to me a little bit about what's happening there with that formulary management.
Yeah, so again, right, so this goes back to my intro where we say I don't prefer or non-prefer product, right? Going back to our insulin comment, right? Mm-hmm. So in that instance, right, they want you as the member to take the high-cost brand medications.
A little bit of behavioral economics there, huh?
Right, so you have a low copay, right? I mean, I've seen Ozempic for free, 0 copay on expanded preventative list.
Okay.
And they had all these expensive drugs. Member could just go get the drug for free. Well, someone's paying for it,
yeah.
Right? So again, if they can manipulate the formulary to get you as the member saying, do I pay a $10 copay or do I pay a $55
Well, the pharmacist
copay?
is going to say that.
Hey,
the drug they prescribed you is $65, but this one's $10.
No. The PBM is switching it before it ever even...
Oh.
So again, the pharmacist puts something in, and they'll switch it at point of dispensing.
Okay.
They'll say, you're going to dispense this one over this one. It's better for the member because it's least expensive. So the pharmacist just only cares about what he's collecting from the member. He does not care what the PBM is billing to the plan. Right? So he comes back and goes, all right, non-branded insulin is $55. The branded, the tier 1 insulin is $10 or $20.
Right.
Here you go. Here's the Humalog.
Here's the $10.
Here's the Humalog. Here's your $1,000 worth of Humalog for this month. Versus I can
and the member's fine. They paid $10.
They paid $10. Right. And again, they don't know, right? Because again, they just have their copay.
Right.
But in lieu
and nor would I expect them to know.
So in lieu of that, so we work off of an open formulary, right? So we have every drug on the formulary, but we do it through utilization management, step therapy, right?
Okay.
We're a generic first, right? So if whatever the most expensive therapy is, that's in line, right?
Right.
That's the one that we want.
It's in the class.
It's in the class,
it's
right?
Appropriate.
100%, right? Instead of Lipitor, I'm going to take atorvastatin, right?
Okay.
Now you could take Lipitor and it's $400 or $500 a month, or I take the atorvastatin, it's $2, right?
So you start there.
We start there, and again, you try fail, right? And if you, for whatever reason, you can't take the generic drug, well, then I guess you need to have the brand medication, right?
Right.
And then if we look at the brand and say, okay, well, what can we do to help reduce the cost on the brand, right? That is our mentality.
So then you might also get the brand internationally.
That's
fair?
Essentially, yeah. So even think about all these inhalers, Brio inhalers, and all these things that cost $400 or $500 a month to fill.
Right.
You can get 90 days worth of supply of that inhaler for 1 month of what you would pay here in the U.S.
Wow.
And as the member, you're getting it for free.
Right.
Right. So I get $1,500 worth of inhalers, and the plan only spends $300 or $400, $500.
So you brought up a good point about the different programs that are coming online, and I know that we've got coupon cards, and we've got I got prescribed a drug, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and immediately I was like, "Here's a coupon card," and I got pinged into my phone, and I can buy it for $10, even though my insurance plan said my card it was going to cost me $65.
Yep.
The drug still costs the same, right?
Drugs still cost the same.
So I have a coupon that says I'm spending $10. Where's that delta going? Is it getting charged back to the plan?
So what pharma is doing is taking your piece of the pie,
Right.
and saying we're going to cover it.
Okay.
The remainder still going back to the plan. Now, eventually, the copay card is used up.
Right.
And
there was a dollar limit for the year.
Right. So there's a dollar limit, and so once it's used up, right? Guess what? You're not getting any credit for any of that stuff. So now you're going to pay the full boat.
Right.
Of the cost of that med until you hit your deductible. So there's no offset, right?
Okay. So then programs like GoodRx and Simple something or other. There's another one. So
there's GoodRx. There's there's a million different kind of discount cards.
Right. And so some of them aren't recognized by insurance plans. Some of them are recognized by insurance plans. How do they operate? So they'll just pick on GoodRx because they're big. Are they just buying more drug so they can get a discount, and then they're selling at a discount?
No, they're contracting. So they don't actually contract directly.
Okay.
They utilize all the other all the big PBMs for contracting, right?
Okay.
So they come and say, all right, we're going to charge you $14 for this drug. All right. Essentially, they're buying the drug for like $2, right? So this free discount card is that they're saying you're paying an extra $12 for a drug, right? And what they do, but the pharmacy at the end of the month, they reconcile everything, and they go back and claw back the money. They say, we have a contract to buy this drug for $2, but you collected 14, so you owe us 12. That's how they make their money. Now, if you use GoodRx, right, you go and pay cash for a medication.
Right.
You don't get credit towards your deductible. You don't
Yeah.
get credit for your max out of pocket. So what
Yeah.
we did through the app is we included a cash card in there already. So if there's a drug that's available with a coupon, right? You look it up, it shows you. You pay that price, and then we can pull it in, so we give you credit for it.
So it goes against my
So it
deductible.
goes against your deductible,
or my copays or whatever.
or your copays, or your
really
max
my out of
out
pocket.
of your out of pocket. Yes.